Hello and welcome to Focus on Israel and the Palestinian Territories. My name is Paul Calvert. Psalm 147 verse 2 and 3 from the New King James Bible says this: The Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers together the outcasts of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. I'm with the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. First of all, what's it like for you being the Deputy Mayor of this beautiful city, Jerusalem?
Well, I always think it's a privilege to be the Deputy Mayor. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I can't quite believe how I managed to get here. But also a very, very heavy sense of responsibility that I'm in a city, a 3,000-year-old city, a city that was built by King David, a city that we were exiled from and that we came back to and that we united. And that kind of blows me away sometimes. So I guess a feeling of privilege and also a deep responsibility.
Now, Jerusalem is a mixture, isn't it, of Arabs and Jews and all kinds of other people, different religions as well.
We are the most diverse city in the country. We have 37% Arabs, we have 25% ultra-Orthodox Jews, 21% secular Jews, and the rest is a mixed match of traditional, religious, Zionist Jews. There's some Christians, there's Armenians. It's an amazing, amazing city. And for me, diversity is something that you have to celebrate and is something that makes us stronger. So yes, I think that's part of the beauty of the city, its diversity.
Now today we're talking about a specific subject, Palestinian School textbooks. Tell us a little bit about the problem and what you're wanting to do to fix this problem.
Sure. So the problem is this. I'll speak first of all of Jerusalem because that's really my jurisdiction, and then we'll talk a little bit more generally. But in Jerusalem, the Arab community of Jerusalem learn in 2-3 systems: the Palestinian system, or the Jewish municipality system, or in the private system. So private system, I'm not so concerned about them. They're only about 10% of all the kids. But in the Palestinian system, as well as some of the schools that we're kind of partly subsidizing, they learn, 93% of kids learn the Palestinian curriculum. They don't know the Israel curriculum. Now, we have our own curriculum for Arabs, from Arab Israelis from around the country, that teaches Arabic as a first language, Hebrew as a second language, and all the other core curriculum subjects that are taught in Israel. Now, the Palestinian Authority school system does not teach any Hebrew, teaches very poor English, and very little technology subjects. So what happens is that this curriculum actually ends up being a curriculum of institutionalized poverty. Because when the kids in Jerusalem graduate, when they're 18 years old, they can't speak Hebrew. So what type of job opportunity are you going to get in Jerusalem if you haven't been taught Hebrew in school? So what we find is a lot of people, who have very little money, remember they live 80% under the poverty line, going out, getting loans to go to adult classes for Hebrew. And it's ridiculous. It's a travesty that they won't taught the most basic thing to be able to get on with life, to get on in life here in Jerusalem. They don't teach them Hebrew. So that's the first problem. Now, the second problem, probably the main problem, is the fact that in this Palestinian curriculum, there's a lot of incitement. There's complete denial of the existence of the State of Israel, and there's glorification of martyrdom. And so those three things, again, create a sense of hatred, create a sense of, they're very cruelly teaching their children that they don't really live where they live, that someday they're going to go back when the Jews are thrown into the sea. And so this whole right of return is a very central part of how they teach. And all it does is puts these kids in a constant sense of insecurity that they're not really, even though they're born somewhere, their parents are born in the same place, this is not really our place, we're somehow going to go back, it's going to come back to us, the Jews are going to run away, we're going to kill them all. And so, this is not anything that's going to teach these kids what a shared society is or how to live in coexistence. Now, the Israeli curriculum for regular kids, I have 4 kids, they're all in, the school system here. They're not coming back with the parallel version of that. The songs that they sing are about one day we'll have peace. And so the contrast is so sad. Ultimately, they're abusing these children into hatred, and they're giving them a curriculum which renders them practically useless in the job market, apart from very minimum pay jobs. Now, as you know, the startup nation is thriving. And there's absolutely no reason why the Arabs can't be part of the prosperity of the startup nation. They're not any less clever. They've just been hard done by their leaders and their educational system. And so I want to start with UNRWA, because UNRWA is the educational system that exists in the Palestinian Authority and in East Jerusalem that is funded by the world. It's funded by most of the OECD countries, by the UK, the US stopped funding UNRWA because of its incitement and because of its glorification of martyrdom. So I'm going around telling all the countries, I was just last week in the House of Lords in the UK, I'm saying to everybody, look, I'm not saying don't fund. I'm realistic and I'm practical. I'm saying fund on condition that they take out incitement, glorification of martyrdom, and the complete denial of the fact that Israel exists. If they can actually get this curriculum tweaked to take out all the damaging things for these kids, ultimately, we are continuing to develop Israel. This is damaging for them. And in Jerusalem, these are my constituents too. And I want my constituents to get the same opportunities that my children are getting. And this curriculum is not a curriculum of opportunity. It's a curriculum of hatred and of institutionalized poverty. And it's not fair. So I'd like these countries to understand what it is that they're funding and use their influence as donors to make life better for the children in this curriculum.
Are they glorifying terrorists, and
Yes.
is it encouraging them to be terrorists as well?
Yes, they're doing both. They're glorifying terrorism and they're encouraging kids. I mean, they're basically saying to kids, the best thing you can do with your life is become a martyr. I mean, for example, Dalal al-Mughrabi, who was a terrorist who killed more than 30 people, including 13 children in the 70s. There's schools named after her. There's karate clubs named after her. She's prominently in the school books as a female role model. This is a female role model, a killer. This is what they want to aspire to. So yes, they encourage, they glorify, and they tell them that this is the great way to serve Allah.
So the children are recently being lied to and indoctrinated by these textbooks.
100%. Lied to, indoctrinated, given false hopes, and just make them into, they do paramilitary activity. They should be learning music lessons, not paramilitary activity. We're talking about little children here who are just completely indoctrinated and brainwashed. I mean, I can send you videos, kids saying, I'm here, we have to kill the Jews, this is what Allah wants us to do. Come on. Look, I say this to Arabs and I say this to Jews as well. Everybody goes to bed at night, hoping and praying that they're going to wake up the next day and the other side is not going to be there. But we're not going anywhere. The Arabs are not going anywhere. The ultra-Orthodox aren't going anywhere. The secular aren't going anywhere. We're all here in this city together. And therefore, the only way forward is to develop a model for a shared society and coexistence. That's the only way. People talk about peace deals on the national level. Peace has to start on the ground, not on the top. It has to start with people with people. And that's why we want to make sure that these children, at least there's a chance that one day they'll want or they'll believe that peace is possible. And this curriculum is not doing that.
So you don't necessarily want them to actually have the Israeli curriculum just to keep their own curriculum, but take all the incitement out?
Look, ideally, I'd like them to do the Israeli curriculum because the Israeli curriculum is one of opportunity where they could go into high-tech, they can go straight into university, they don't have to do makeup courses. But if we can't have that, and I'm realistic and practical, at least take out the incitement and give them opportunity, teach them the language that will help them get a good job. Yes.
Is there a willingness from the Palestinian Authority to change these books, or does pressure need to be put on them?
There's no willingness. They lie. They've said that they teach Holocaust education in the Palestinian school books. Complete lie. They went around America with that lie for quite a while. There's zero willingness. Not just that there's no willingness, they threaten people in East Jerusalem that if they switch their kids to the Israeli curriculum, they are being traitors and something bad will befall on them. So it's very opposite. They threaten people not to take a curriculum of opportunity for their children.
Now, the United Nations is something that we all fund, and UNRWA is part of the United Nations. So are they actually teaching children in their schools as well? Because I know that they look after some schools.
This is exactly what's happening in UNRWA schools. UNRWA don't have their own curriculum. UNRWA have the curriculum of the Palestinian Authority. They've just taken the Palestinian Authority curriculum and put it in the schools. So the UN is teaching hatred, incitement, and glorification of martyrdom. There's no other way to look at it.
And we fund that.
And everybody's funding it.
Yeah. So something needs to change everywhere.
Something needs to change everywhere. Like I said, for years we were trying to shut UNRWA schools down. I think that that's going to be very difficult. If we did manage to shut them down, our municipality could absorb these children into our educational system. But as long as they're there, and as long as they just got... The reason I'm doing this now is because funding was just renewed in November. And so the reason I'm doing it now is to say, look, before you hand over the checks just make sure that you're not doing something which is against the values of the UN and your own democracies. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Are foreign countries aware of this, or are they turning a blind eye?
I think some are aware and turning a blind eye. I think some are unaware. I'm now going to be making meetings with all the ambassadors of all the donor countries to be able to tell them this and to see if they can pass the message on to their governments. My first stop was the UK. My next stop will be the UN in Geneva in March, and I'm going to be talking about this there.
Are there many countries at the moment that have actually stopped funding UNRWA?
The US, and then we had hopes that a few countries, because of the corruption scandal that erupted last year, because there's zero accountability for the money, there were 3 countries that pulled out, Netherlands, a couple of other countries, and now, sadly, I hear that they've reinstated their funding.
Now, you talked about just recently being in the House of Lords. Is Great Britain paying towards UNRWA, towards this problem? And how well were you received in the House of Lords?
The UK is one of the biggest donors, £65 million a year. Wow. And I was very well received. I was the guest of the Conservative Friends of Israel. I was received very well. I did 2 sessions, one with MPs and one with peers, with Lords, and they both are trying to figure out how they can appeal to the Foreign Office to make them change the curriculum or cut the funding.
So Great Britain maybe actually start changing something?
I think with Boris's government, he's just passed the anti-BDS legislation. With Boris's government, we have a real shot.
Now, there'll never be peace with incitement, so dealing with this, do you feel that you're part of the peace movement, moving peace forward?
Well, absolutely. I think that if we want to develop a shared society, if we want to talk about coexistence, if we want children to be able to see a future where there is peace, this is ABC. You have to start with school. You know, like I said before, you can't expect leaders to sign agreements from the top and then expect people to just want to be peace partners the next day. You've got to start from the grassroots. And the grassroots, there's no more grassroots in elementary school. So that's where we're going.
Now, just recently you had a press conference and you played a video from the Shafat refugee camp. Tell us a little bit about the video and how did it make you feel playing that video?
Well, the organisation that I did the press conference with, the Near East Policy Centre, they go in clandestine to these places and they interview these kids. And basically, like I mentioned earlier, kids talking about, killing Jews being their purpose, seeing paramilitary activity, seeing kids march, glorification of martyrdom. It's just very sad. I don't feel angry. I feel very sad for these children and for their families. I just feel, what are you doing to them? You're filling them up. They're born, and then you take them and you fill them up with hatred and send them out to life and then say, oh, well, you may have to get a job with Jews because there's no economy here because we haven't bothered to do anything constructive. All we've done is hate on Israel. I think in East Jerusalem there are a lot of people who are beginning to see that their salvation is not with the Palestinian Authority. The salvation is actually with us. And we have to support and strengthen those people to understand that we are here with open arms. We want them to be part of, Jerusalem society. And we want them to be contributing members of Jerusalem. And we want them to get the same opportunities, the same jobs that everybody else can have.
Now, you see this sort of thing in like Hamas or Hamas-run areas, but you don't really expect to see that in Jerusalem.
Well, some parts of East Jerusalem are Hamas-run.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately. And so we see a lot of very, very difficult, a couple of miles from here, you see very, very difficult stuff to be able to accept.
This is child abuse, is it?
I've been saying for years that this is child abuse. It's taking a child, which is a vessel, and filling that vessel with poison has to be child abuse. There's no other way to look at it.
So things are never really going to change unless we deal it from the root. Exactly.
Like I said, you can talk, and, I've got some Arab friends who say to me, you can sign all the peace agreements you want. Ultimately, if we're not friends, what'll happen is what Oslo happened. If we can't get along and coexist and live in a shared society, then what's the point of signing an agreement? People will be in the same place that they always were. So I believe that things are always more sustainable when they start from the bottom up. And this is what we're doing.
What's your prayer finally for Jerusalem? Are you positive? Are you hopeful?
I'm always say that if a politician is not positive and optimistic, they shouldn't bother being a politician because you have to have something to give and to offer. So I'm always very hopeful. Not only am I hopeful that we can actually do something here in Jerusalem. I'm hopeful that Jerusalem, because its incredible diversity, can be the laboratory of the solution, not just for the conflict here, but also for the regional coexistence. I truly believe that it's going to come from Jerusalem. We are the laboratory. And so all the models that we develop for a shared society here are models that are going to have repercussions and are going to be able to roll out everywhere else in the country and also in the region. And so not only am I hopeful, I feel that we are here the solution.
Okay, Fleur, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If you'd like to know more about our show, you can join us on Facebook. Just look for Focus on Israel-Radio. Ezekiel 37 verse 4-6 says this, Again he said to me, Prophesy to these bones, and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God of these bones, Surely I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. I will put sinners on you, and bring flesh upon you, cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live. Then you shall know that I am the Lord, and the Jews will receive the real shalom peace.